problem, but cannot solve them. I remember years and years and years ago, excuse me for just a second here, I'm going to pull this up. I remember years and years and years ago hearing a preacher by the name of Richard King is giving his testimony about how he got saved. He was talking about being a longshoreman down in Galveston, Texas. And he said he's sitting in a bar one day and it's a nice day or whatever, and he's looking out at the water and the tides and things like that. And he's listening to that song, sitting at the dock of the bay, watching the tides roll away, just wasting time. And he said, he's sitting there drinking and smoking and doing whatever else he was doing in the bar. And he said, all of a sudden, he said, yep, that's exactly what I'm doing with my life. Is I'm just sitting here watching the water, wasting my life, wasting time. And it just seems like that happens so very often. A lot of the songs have that kind of a thing. And the moral of his what he was telling in the story is they finally got saved and things. But he was talking about, he said, so many of the songs that he'd listened to in those days, they were hopeless. They expressed hopelessness, and rather than really even thinking about it in those days, not even thinking about it, rather than saying, wow, this song is sad, or this is hopeless, or man, this is a terrible worldview. He said instead you just think, yep, that's me. And so the songs didn't challenge and charge and encourage a person to a better life. The songs he said he was listening to, what they did is they commiserated and commiserated. And some of the strongest worldview lessons I think that people ever learn don't come from books or from classrooms. They come from songs like that. Some person sitting in a smoky back room bar, or is sitting with a bunch of friends doing drugs or something like that, are writing these songs about misery and about troubles and difficulties. I remember now, I was a cowboy when I got saved, and so I can remember my pastor, I listened to country music just all the time. And it's how I grew up and all that. I grew up listening to gunfighter ballads. I remember one of my favorites was a song, My Best Friend Was Samuel Colt, the wicked six-gun that I tote, and he's always around when I need him most. Leaps so fast in my hand, and he'll knock down any man. Drink a toast to my best friend, Samuel Colt. I listened to those sorts of songs when I was growing up, but then got a little bit older, and listening to country music and things like that. And so I started going to church. I got saved and started going to church. And pastor, I told him, man, I just want to listen to this music. I like listening to this music. And so my pastor says, oh, fine, go ahead and listen to all of that music you want to listen to. That's perfectly fine to do that. He says, just what I would recommend. He says, what I'd recommend you do is that anytime the song has to do with getting drunk, I'd turn it off. If it has to do with killing somebody, I'd turn it off. If it has to do with getting a divorce, I'd turn it off. If it has to do with sex outside of marriage, I'd turn it off. And it got to a place where I was turning it off so much, I decided I needed to figure out listen to some different kind of music, so I didn't have to deal with, so constantly turning the radio off and on and off and on and off and on. That kind of a thing. And so I do want to say hello to all of you that are signing in. I do have an agenda, a program that I'm going to try to get through today. And so if I don't do an awful lot of communicating with you, talking to you, I'll be watching. I can just barely see the little screen on my phone there, but I'll be watching. And if there is something that it looks like I could, that I'd be able to I'm looking on here over here, for whatever reason I can't get this screen to show it in bigger letters. That's what I was hoping to do. I'm not sure why it's not doing that. Anyway, so I'll just do what I'm doing. I can barely see that kind of the writing in the comments up here, but anyway, so turn it off all the time, and that country music and things like that. And so so much of the music of the world, so much of the music that is popular in our world today, it does have a message. It conveys a worldview. It conveys a message, and it's not a positive message, And I don't know if people really pay much attention to the fact that of even what the message is. But what's happening is something like this: is you're listening to that song and you're saying, "Yep, that's me. That's my misery. That's the trouble that I'm going through in my life right now." And so music, doesn't debate, it doesn't argue, it really assumes this is the way life is for everybody. And music bypasses logic, and it speaks to emotions. It trains listeners on how to interpret life. And by the time someone believes something, they often felt it first. Music doesn't tell you what to think, it tells you what to accept. And this isn't an attack on musicians. I'm not trying to attack musicians. I'm just trying to consider the messages that is being brought out in so much of the music that people are listening to and that they're being entertained by, and really that they're they're going to sleep by, or they're comforting their souls with, and so forth. And it's a message. So often it's a message of hopelessness. It's all about the problem, but it never deals with a solution, how to fix the solution. So naming the problem is not the same as solving a problem. There's a difference between diagnosing a problem and delivering a cure. Many songs do the first really extremely well. What really got me thinking about this is just a song by Paul Simon I just got acquainted with. I'd never even heard of it before until just this last week. A song by Paul Simon, "One man's ceiling is another man's floor." And the idea is the ceiling equals frustration and limitation and confinement. The floor equals stability and contentment and security. They're the same environment. People living in apartment complexes and high rises. And here's one person. He's stuck right here. He's stuck in his floor. He's stuck in his place. But right above him is a ceiling, and someone else has got a higher level, and he'll never be able to attain that place. He's not ever going to move up to another floor. He's not going to ever. One man's ceiling is another man's floor, and nothing changes in the song. No one grows. It's a sad song. It's a hopeless song. In fact, people, we all have different tastes in music and things like that. Hi there, Leon. We all have different tastes in music, and so I don't want to attack people's taste. But it's a blues song. It's sad. It's hopeless. And it's not really entertaining. For me, it's not entertaining even to listen to. The song's honest, but it's also finished. The idea is there's nowhere else to go. We're stuck in this spot in life. I think it's interesting because my son had, what introduced me to that song was my oldest son had, he was challenging some folks. He said, every floor has a ceiling, and every ceiling can be a floor. And his idea was challenging you. Just because this is where you are today, let that be a challenge to make it to the next floor. So his worldview is hopefulness, where most of the songs are hopelessness in this world today. So many songs, the worldview, it's a worldview without an exit. Every worldview answers, is life going somewhere, moving something? Can things change? Is there meaning beyond right now? And Paul Simon's song assumes there's no divine intervention, there's no transformation, there's no upward call, there's no way to move past where we are in this life. And it's a closed system. And acceptance replaces hope. The whole idea is here's where we are. This is where fate has placed us, and you better just go ahead and accept it and be where you are, and it'll, at least that way, you won't be so miserable. And what a place to be, and just hopeless. This is where I am, and there's no hope for any other. I think about like in those cultural systems where they have the caste system, and you're born into this caste, and there's no hope of ever rising above the caste in which you were born. And really, the worldview of so many as expressed in that song "Sitting at the Dock of the Bay," or "Every man, one man's ceiling is another man's floor." One man is it's the same thing. It's just it's a caste system. It's a hopeless system, is what it is. But then I think about that, the different worldview. There are ceilings on every floor. Today's ceiling can become tomorrow's floor. One person over time, difficulty becomes mastery. Growth is assumed. My son's idea was you can rise above this level. Simon says, here's comparison without change, but my son is challenged with expectation. If we get up and we put our hand to the plow and we work at it, by the grace of God, we can rise above our circumstances. One worldview explains why we're stuck and kind of commiserates in that. And the other one assumes you won't have to stay that way. And that song, Sitting at the Dock of the Bay, my friend's name was Richard King. I'm not sure he's still alive today. But it said, watching the tide roll away, wasting time. And, the song didn't really deceive him. It accurately dealt with the emptiness that he was going through, that he experienced in his life at that moment. And so many people experience in their life. But there's no direction in it. It's just, yep, this is where I am. I'm identifying the issue. I'm sitting here wasting time. But there's no direction, no challenge to move beyond that place. The song didn't save him. It just kind of settled him in that, in that position. Music can validate despair, but validation is not the same as transformation. And beloved, what we need to do is we need to find a challenge. We need to find a charge. We need to find something to press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. Hopeless songs do feel honest. People crave understanding so often more than emotions. They don't want to be challenged in life. They don't want to move past where they are in their life. They just, come on, let's just understand this is where we are. I don't want to move forward. Laziness, spiritual, emotional, physical laziness. I don't want to do anything with my life. I just, this is where I am. Just make me feel better where I am. Don't challenge me to move on. Make me feel better where I am. And songs sometimes become like an emotional companion. You can listen to that song over and over and over again, and it's like a friend who says, I feel your pain. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to work any harder. You don't have to get up any earlier. You don't need to seek an almighty God. You don't need to trust him for your salvation and for your sins to be forgiven. You don't need to get an education. All you need to do is just sit right here and I'll put my arm around you and you and we can be friends. Like that kind of a deal. A song can tell you the truth, but still leave you unchanged, and that's a danger. That's not a good thing. That's a dangerous thing. And on the other hand, we have Christian music, and so much Christian music is a challenge forward. I'm afraid for a lot of the modern Christian music because it is meant to cause a person just sit down and relax and be worshipful, kumbaya, and just all that kind of stuff, where I'm thinking about songs like Onward Christian Soldiers Marching As to War. It's not an emotional analysis. It's not introspection. It's a call to movement. It's a call to challenge. It's a call to face what's in front of us and move forward to do something better with our lives. Secular music often says, you're not alone. Christian music says, follow me. Christianity never denies pain, but it never treats pain as the final chapter. So, as Christians, we need to be careful and discerning about really the kind of music that we allow in our homes and to enter into our mind through our ears. We need to be discerning about those sorts of things. Listen to what we're hearing And, not just, boy, I like the sound of it, or, oh, this really comforts my heart and my soul. What we need to do is we need to be discerning enough to recognize whether that music is helping us to grow and push on, or whether that music is really helping us to um, uh, to dive into despair and to settle into despair. I'm not calling for censorship, saying we shouldn't allow that music to be played or those things like that. I just think that as Christians, we ought to be discerning, and we ought to call out. We ought to listen to it and call out the differences between the music and Christian and non-Christian. And what is that worldview, and what is it doing to us in our spirit and our soul? And where is that music taking us in our lives? Does this song challenge me, or does it just keep me company? And we ought to get in, especially with young people who get so caught up in the entertainment world. We ought to get them to consider not just the music, and I do think the music needs to be taken into consideration, because some music really is we say it's neutral or it's all moral, but that's not true of music. And but even more so, we need to be looking at the words, the message of the song. Is it really something that we ought to, that's theologically sound? And even more than, and even just as important as theologically sound, is it music that helps to promote us to a higher level spiritual? I'm pressing on the upward way. New heights I'm gaining every day. Is that the kind of music you're listening to? Or music that just says, I'm sitting at the dock of the bay, watching the tides roll away, wasting time? Listen, if you're wasting time in your life, you need to press on. I'm pressing on the upward way. So, from just naming a problem to finding a solution. Secular songs often name the problem, but they stop where Christianity begins. Some music explains life without God, but the gospel explains life with God. Christ doesn't just describe the dock. He calls us off of it. So if you'd like, I want to encourage you to pay attention to the music, kind of write down the words. Take the time to look up the words so you can read them rather than just, letting them absorb into you. And be discerning about the music that you listen to. And find Christian music, but not just Christian music, the kind that presses you on the upward way. Well, I'm getting ready to take my grandson to his PE class now. And so I'd like to bid you adieu. The Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And let me just say thank you to each of you that watched, came on, and stuck with me to the end of this program. Take care.